My name is Subhash Chandra. Before we start this session, let me just initiate it and how we are going to start and what is the importance of this session and so on. As you know, the theme of this conference, I welcome Dr. N.P. Mishra and all distinguished delegates. The main theme is Mission Noble and Vision Global. So first of all, I am very much inspired by this mission, and let us see what is this Mission Noble and what is this Vision Global and why it is required. Then we can initiate the sessions, and I hope the objective of these sessions is not only delivering the lecture and listening, but we should be inspired. We should be implement when we go back from home, from here, right? I hope all of you agree. And now, this is a very right moment. At this moment, why they have organized this conference, and we are very lucky. We are the lucky souls who have been part of this project. There are two types of people in the world. One are the people who are violent people, and one are the people who are peaceful people. The one in Mahabharata, also there were two types of people. One was Kaurava, another was Pandavas. Pandav was on the right side of the dharma, and Kaurava was on the right side of adharma. So same way, at this moment, the people who are in the peace side, they are the peaceful people. The people who are on the violent side, they are terrorists. So it is only question of mind, where we apply. Okay, Mission Noble is the main philosophy of Jainism philosophy, or all the religions. They want to create a new world society, creating a new world order, peaceful and joyful society through Jainism philosophy. And what is global vision? It is a vision of a global Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. World is one family. Now again question comes, why it is so? Because in this 21st century, all our human values have been decreasing, right? We have shifted transition of values from Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam to globalization. So earlier ancient wisdom says world is one family. Now globalization says world is one market. ये दुनिया बाजार है और हम कहते थे ये दुनिया जो है वर्ल्ड जो है हमारा परिवार. अब उस कॉन्सेप्ट से हमारी सारी चीजें बदल गई. लेकिन Jainism philosophy is very old religion, 3000 years BC, and again time has come to again come back. Religion means reconnect to our roots and values, right? So that's why it is very, very relevance of this topic of relevance of Jainism philosophy in modern times. What is the modern time now? How you feel in the modern time? Is it progressive or destructive? Destructive. Why? Because of decreasing human values. There is no relationship between family, parents and children. The relationship is deteriorating. And relationship between parents as well as teachers and children deteriorating. Society is crumbling in spite of material progress and all those development. Still people are not happy. They are not achieving their goals. So what are the main crises we are having at the moment? At the moment we are having 5 main crises. One is crisis of humanity. That means again comes crisis of survival. That is crisis of people, peace and planet. So this is major cause how to create peace, how to save the earth planet. This is the agenda of 21st century. Then there is crisis of civilization crisis. Because there is clashes of civilization. Civilizations are not together. Again you have to unite. It is needed unity of mind, unity of a culture, unity of religions, so that we can create Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And there is also cultural crisis, because whole of the culture has been become globalization, like Coca-Cola culture. We have to restore back culture of peace and love. And again, environmental crisis is a threat to humanity, climate change, global warming. All the leaders are struggling how we can have the ecological balance through peace and value. And finally, it is a crisis of spiritual crisis. That is a peace and spiritual crisis. So only through Jainism philosophy we can create a new world, creating a world of where one world, one family, one religion. Religion means religion of humanity. One culture, culture of peace and love and compassion. And that is the global vision, creating a new world order. With these few words, now I invite Dr. Vaidya to initiate. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll start talking. So this talk is focused on something very practical and applied. The goal of what I want to talk about today is how to change educational policy and curriculum in order to include Jain philosophy within it. And what I mean by this is that in the United States of America and UK, we oftentimes teach courses to students where they have the opportunity to learn about Jainism. And most of the time in those courses, you learn about Jainism in a class on the philosophy of religion, or you learn it in a class on Asian philosophy or Indian philosophy, or maybe a particular class on Jainism. But because the curriculum in the United States of America and in England doesn't really force each student to learn or take a course in philosophy of religion or in Asian philosophy, many students would never be exposed to anything that Jainism has to say throughout their college career. So my goal in my project has been to find a way to include Jainism into all of the curriculum that is taught in the United States of America and in England by inserting it into a very specific place. A place where if the argument is successful, it would be automatically included in a course in which every student would have to take. And that course is called critical thinking. Every student in the United States of America and in England must take a course on critical thinking, which is a course basically on argumentation theory. Typically in the United States of America, you use one of these two books, which are books on logic and critical thinking. But these books do not give a picture of any ideas about critical thinking that derive from sources outside of the European tradition or the Greek tradition. So when you learn critical thinking through the use of these books, you basically come to have a picture of what critical thinking is that does not include discussion of anything from Indian philosophy. So the goal of my project is to find a way to change all textbooks in the United States and UK so that they include ideas from Indian philosophy. And in particular, I am working at this presentation on how to include ideas from Jain philosophy. And now I'm going to argue very rigorously and deductively for the claim that you can use Anekantavada as a concept that can be taught in critical thinking, and that there's very good evidence that the exclusion of it is not appropriate. Okay? So, how do you do that? How do you argue that you must include some curriculum from a religious tradition like Jainism? What you do is you find a debate that already is operating in the space of the literature of the books in terms of how they're made. And all of the books right now focus on a debate between what is called the skill view of critical thinking and the character view of critical thinking. The skill view of critical thinking says that basically doing critical thinking is simply the application of logical ideas without the use of any particular mental attitude or way of thinking about the engagement with another person in a conversation. The character view is an opposite view. It says that to think critically is not only to have specific mathematical skills or identification skills of concepts, but also to have a specific attitude towards the person that you're having a conversation with. This debate exists right now in the United States of America. It's a very hot debate, and some people are trying to change the curriculum in America to move away from the skill view to the character view. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this debate as an anchor to sort of find a way to say that Jainism can go right into the center of that debate and offer a contribution. If it can offer a contribution, then it should be taught. And because this class is taught to everyone in the UK and the United States, all of them would be forced to learn this simple idea from Jain philosophy. That's the argument. Okay, so before I go into that, I'm going to talk about the Jain contributions. I just want to point out that the oldest text of critical thinking in the Indian tradition, the Karaka Samhita, also contains stuff that pertains to the debate between the skill view and the character view. I won't read the slide, but there are lots of aspects of this specific text that talk about the character view. In addition, if anyone's familiar with the Nyaya Sutras, they would know that at the beginning of the Nyaya Sutras, it is also discussed what is the relationship between the character and the skill view. So, here's the first contribution from the Jain tradition. A wise monk does not speak unexpressible truth, truth mixed with falsehood, doubtful truth, or complete falsehood. A wise monk speaks after careful thought or things uncertain, even of truths in a manner which may be free from sin, mild, and beyond doubt. Likewise, he does not use harsh words, nor even truth that may cause deep injury, for even these generate bondage to negative karmas. A wise soul, conscious of evil intentions, does not speak words as prohibited above, or any other that may cause harm. This is an actual textual reference to something that I believe speaks to the character view as opposed to the skill view. But because there are so many Jain texts that I could cite, rather than citing the Jain texts, I will go directly to those scholars of Jain philosophy that have already defended the idea that there is something in Jain philosophy that speaks to the character view. So, A.B. Dhruva in 1933 wrote a paper where he said, Jainism is par excellence the doctrine of ahimsa. Ahimsa not only of the physical life, but also of intellectual outlook. Jainism did not stop short at a mere negative attitude of toleration towards other schools, but took the positive step of investigating how each of those schools erred. As a result, it came to the conclusion that the errors of those schools were only partial truths as seen from particular angles of vision, that none of them was wholly wrong, and if each of them would see things from the other point of view, H.R. Kapadia. When this ahimsa is allowed to play its role on an intellectual plane, it teaches us to examine with respect the opinions of others, as they too are some of the angles of vision or pathways to reality which is many-sided and enable us to realize and practice truth in its entirety. This implies that ahimsa, the Jain attitude of intellectual ahimsa, is the origin of anekantavada. In other words, the Jaina principle of respect for life is the origin of respect for the opinions of others. The most renowned philosopher B.K. Matilal also said, non-violence, abstention from killing or taking the life of others was a dominant trend in the whole of the Shramana movement in India, particularly in Buddhism and Jainism. I think that the Jains carried the principle of non-violence to the intellectual level and thus propounded their Anekanta doctrine. Thus the hallmark of the Anekanta doctrine was toleration. Okay. So, there are some short passages from eminent scholars of Indian philosophy, as well as a passage from a Jain text that suggest that there is some relationship in Jain philosophy in the idea of intellectual ahimsa that pertains to the character view. So there's a question we should ask now. Should we be teaching in critical thinking courses the idea of intellectual ahimsa as part of the curriculum because it speaks to the character view as opposed to the skill view? I believe that the answer to that question is yes. However, it appears that inside of the scholarly literature on Jain philosophy, there's a debate. There is a debate about whether or not Jains ever really did propound the doctrine of intellectual ahimsa. Some people say that they did, and some people that they don't. One of the eminent scholars that gave a speech earlier this morning, Dr. Jeffrey Long himself, has written a long dissertation defending and discussing this very idea. So borrowing from his work, I think we can draw a distinction between the historical question of whether or not the Jains defended intellectual ahimsa on the basis of Anekantavada from the philosophical question of whether or not Anekantavada and intellectual ahimsa can be a foundation for religious toleration, and in particular, in what I'm arguing, a way of thinking about how to think critically with another person in a dialectical engagement. So, this is the connecting argument. Critical thinking involves engaging opposite points of view. There is good textual evidence that Anekantavada can be interpreted as a form of intellectual ahimsa. Intellectual ahimsa supports the character view because it is an attitude towards opposing points of view. So, Anekantavada can be presented as part of the debate on whether critical thinking is exhausted by skill or also involves character and a certain kind of critical spirit. So, Anekantavada can be taught in critical thinking textbooks in the area where one teaches the cultivation of attitudes for critical engagement. So let me just pause for a second here and emphasize why I think this is so important. Much of what I've heard so far today has been discussion of the relevance of Jainism to quantum mechanics, to issues of mathematics, but what I see in the literature is I see what I call the zero penetration thesis. I see that there are no textbooks where anyone is forced to learn in the curriculum pedagogy anything about Jainism. So my goal has been to find a way to put it somewhere where it cannot be ignored. And insofar as there is a debate about the character versus the skill view, it seems to me very hard to argue that intellectual ahimsa, whether or not it is strictly derived from Anekantavada, is not a contribution to the character view. So my core conclusion is that we should use this thing as an opportunity to gain a foothold within curriculum and education policy as a way of promoting Jain philosophy outside of a specialized class. Because as it is currently taught in most places, you only have access to Jain philosophy as part of your curriculum when you take a class on philosophy of religion or Jainism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Vaidya, for your deep presentation. I would request the chair of the session, Professor P.S. Thakur, to present a memento to Dr. Anand Vaidya as a memory. Thank you, sir. The next invited speaker for this technical session is Professor Mahendra Kumar Bhandari, who is the Dean Faculty of Law and Director of Amity Law School, Amity University, Mumbai. He has over 36 years of professional and academic experience in teaching, research, administration, exploration of innovation, technical teaching skills, and curriculum designing. He has published 6 books on constitutional law and around 80 research papers in national and international journals. He has participated and presented research papers at more than 70 international and national conferences and have organized near about 15 national seminars, moot courts, symposia, and workshops. He is associated with 12 academic institutions and is also the honorary consulting editor of Criminal Law Reporter and Gujarat Current Decisions. Let's have a hand for him on the dais. Thank you.
Jai Jinendra, Namaskar and good afternoon. Honorable Chair and Co-Chair, distinguished panel speakers and learned audience. For me, particularly, it is most gratifying day that a dream which we saw 2 years back at the Ladno meeting of the Board of Advisors has come true, and has come true in a grand manner. Thanks to Professor Mishra and his dedicated team and IIT Mumbai for organizing this event, this international conference, in a more than what we could imagine wonderful way. Thank you, sir. Now we have been all the day, we have been talking about the life. I'll talk about the death. Jain religion is the only religion where death can also be celebrated. Jains know how to live and how to die. A meaningful death, a death which becomes a celebration. So you could understand I am talking to you before for a very important topic, and rather it was made important because of a fallacious judgment of the Rajasthan High Court in the month of August 2015, which has fortunately been adjourned by the Supreme Court of India. I was one instrumental in arguing for our Jain community. So some of the arguments which we have raised before the Supreme Court, I am putting forth here. And I'm sure that when the regular hearings are held, the Rajasthan High Court judgment will be quashed in toto. It has been stated right now. And one thing which I see as a silver lining in the cloud, that this judgment of the Rajasthan High Court made all the Jain sects, whether Swatambar or Digambar or across the country, a wonderful unity we have seen. The tremendous amount of resistance we have shown to that erroneous judgment is remarkable. And I think it was one of the finest show of the solidarity by Jain community opposing that erroneous judgment, which says that Santara is equated with society. Next, please. So, friends, this is brief presentation I'm going to share with you. What is the true meaning of Santhara or Sanlekhana? In Swatambar sect we call it Santhara, Digambar sect they call it Sanlekhana. The basic meaning is same. What is the religious background? What is the legal angle? Philosophical and scientific perspective? And can Santhara be equated with suicide or sati? What the Rajasthan High Court has done? And what we need to do. These are the few points I'm going to elaborate it in short time. Next, please. Santhara or Sanlekhana, or we call it Samadhi Maran, we call it Pandit Maran also, is embracing death voluntarily, happily, knowing that the death is very imminent, death is near because of the health, because of some other crisis, and one has to die. So one wants to die peacefully, one wants to, even I would not say, I don't agree that he is dying. I would say he is leaving the body. He is not dying. Because the soul is eternal. We believe in rebirth, so he'll take rebirth again. What is dying is body, not the soul. So he is leaving his body, and why he is leaving his body, that is the highest form of aparigraha. The time has come when he realizes, now this body is a cage for my soul, and I want to get liberate out of this body, so let us adopt a peaceful way of leaving the body. I would call it like that way. I would not say that it is a death, it is a leaving the body, terminating the one life to enter into another life. In etymological meaning, if we say, it is sal lekhana. Sal means properly, and lekhana means thinning out. Thinning out of the body, and not only the body, but passions. As we have been talking in the day, that we have to dilute our passions. We have to purify our soul. So, diluting and thinning out of the passions and the body is called Sanlekhana. In Tattvartha Sutra also, the Sanlekhana has been approached much before the death. A person cannot take Sanlekhana or Santhara just